man, I really wish I could buy the Model 3 long range, but the price is just too high.
Why don't you just wait for next year when the federal tax credit will become available?
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll get $7,500 off, I'll save a bit of money, and...
The long range Model 3 is no longer available.
Alright, so when is the long range Model 3 coming back?
At some point in 2023.
Okay, it's been 2023 for the past 4 months.
Oh, really? I guess we should bring it back now. Here it is.
Oh, cool, but the range isn't what it used to be.
Not only that, it only qualifies for half the federal tax credit.
Is it at least a lithium iron phosphate battery pack, so can I charge it to full every day?
No comment.
Ugh, jeez, I can't keep track with you guys anymore. Is this Highland or...
No, but it's time for another very special edition of Guess That Battery Pack. Let's begin. What a wicked turn of events. It's quite confusing, I know. So, essentially, last night, Tesla reopened orders for the long-range all-wheel drive Model 3, which has been off of the website. We haven't been able to order it for the past 8 months. So there's some good news, right? But the downside is the range figure. Tesla, I don't think, has tested this new Model 3 on the EPA range cycle because they're currently just saying it has over 325 miles of range with the 18-inch aero wheels, and if you opt for the 19-inch sport wheels, which I don't recommend, then it brings it down to 310 plus miles, which is honestly starting to get close to that of the performance Model 3 with much larger tires. So the confusing part is that they're definitely not using the same battery pack in the performance Model 3 as the long-range Model 3, because Tesla says on their own website that the federal tax credit is only $37.50 on the long-range Model 3, which means the battery pack it's using must be from China, because if it was using the same 2170 cells as the performance Model 3 or the Model Y, then it would qualify for the full 7500, but it doesn't. So looking at the specs on the website on how the long-range Model 3 was basically the same weight as the performance Model 3, that had a lot of people thinking, okay, if the range has decreased a little bit, but the weight is still pretty high, and it only qualifies for half the federal tax credit, this must be some variant of the lithium iron phosphate battery pack, which of course got me excited, because if you've been following CATL, Tesla's main LFP supplier, you know that they've said they've been planning this lithium iron manganese phosphate chemistry, which would have higher energy density, which in my opinion would make perfect sense for this vehicle, because you would want a bit higher energy density since it's a dual motor vehicle. You don't have as much space underneath the vehicle for a lower energy density like my car, the Model 3 rear-wheel drive, has. So a slightly higher energy density that still doesn't require nickel or cobalt, that's cheaper to produce, that allows them to still get over 300 miles of range, but ideally still let you charge to 100% every single day and also have higher cycle life. That would be the ideal scenario, but the confusing part is, I guess the jury's still out on which exact chemistry they're using for this one, because the weight lines up quite a bit with other long-range Model 3s available globally, because Giga Shanghai does manufacture long-range Model 3s with 2170 cells from LG Chem, and apparently the weight is incredibly close to that of those international models. So because it qualifies for half of the federal tax credit, we know that they're still assembling this Model 3 in Fremont. It's not just a Chinese-built car imported to the US, because then it would get no federal tax credit at all. But the confusing part to me is that if it is lithium iron phosphate, it still enables 250 kilowatt fast charging, which my LFP Model 3 is capped out at 170 kilowatts. That's the rear-wheel drive variant. So there's still, I guess, a chance that they might just be importing LG Chem 2170 packs to the United States, and if that's true, this is definitely a bit more disappointing, because it means not only are you not getting the full tax credit, but you're also going to be stuck just charging to 80% every day, and the cycle life isn't going to be as good as LFP, so this is just going to be a straight up range downgrade. You know, before they took it away, you could get 358 miles of range on a charge, which was basically industry leading. No one could beat that, and if they are using 2170 cells from China, it just means that they're not as energy dense, or it's an overall smaller pack. So I guess the advantage is it's probably cheaper for Tesla, or maybe it's a bit more efficient. But again, if that was the case, I feel like the weight should be a little bit lower than it was before they took it away, and as far as I can tell, it's not. So overall, I'm just pretty much frustrated and upset that Tesla does not disclose the batteries being used in their vehicles on the website. I personally think when battery packs affect the day-to-day use of the car this much, it's kind of rude and upsetting to not disclose what people are buying. Like, it definitely affected my buying decision to know that, okay, okay, if I buy the rear-wheel drive Model 3, I'm getting lithium iron phosphate so I can charge it to 100% every single day if I need to, and the cycle life is higher so it's not going to degrade as quickly as the other battery packs, so I felt more comfortable going with a lower range option. Right now, Tesla just kind of dropped this on the website and didn't tweet about it. Elon hasn't said anything at the time of recording this, and even the support agents from Tesla are, as usual, sadly, pretty useless. I talked to 3 different support agents, and 2 of them said we cannot confirm the battery chemistry right now, but one of them was actually speculating along with me because he said, you know, the new long-range Model 3 only qualifies for half the tax credit, which means there's some kind of battery update with this model, but he didn't want to go on the record and actually say this is what chemistry it has. And John, who texted me directly from Tesla, explicitly did say that yes, it does have a lithium iron phosphate chemistry, which means you can charge it to 100% every day. I tried to get confirmation on that by asking, okay, so are you saying that every single day I wake up with this Model 3, assuming I can charge it from home, I get 325 miles of range to start with? And he said, that is correct. So I hope that John ends up being right, but considering the answer is not consistent between the support agents, I wouldn't look at that either as confirmation, even though it's technically word straight from Tesla. Real confirmation is going to be when someone actually takes delivery of one of these new long-range Model 3s and goes into the battery settings of the car and sees if it actually encourages you to charge it to 100% every day, just like my car does. If that happens, we'll know for sure this is an iron-based battery pack, but deliveries start next month, so we might not even know for another 4 to 6 weeks what the chemistry of this battery pack is, unless of course Tesla actually discloses it, which I really wish they would. The other interesting part is that they're still referring to the range as like a greater than number. I believe that's because they haven't got an official EPA range estimate on this model yet, so let's assume the worst and say it's not an iron-based cathode and this is just imported 2170 cells from China. It could end up being like a 330 or even a 335 mile range once the EPA actually does a range test with it, and I know that that's technically lower than the old Model 3 long range, but let me provide some silver lining for even that worst case scenario. The silver lining is that, yeah, it sucks that the range is lower than it was before, but it's still really only going to be a difference of 25, maybe 30 miles from the previous generation Model 3, and when you're road tripping and when you're driving at highway speeds, you're not getting those EPA numbers most of the time anyway, so a difference of 20 to 30 miles on the EPA range test is really not that great a deal, especially if you're the kind of person that wants a long-range Model 3 because you want to have room to spare and you want to play it safe and you want to have extra range and everything. Well, if you have that mindset towards EVs, you're probably not going to be driving it to 3%, 2% when you get home or when you get to a supercharger. If you have that safe mentality, you're probably going to want to charge before you dip below to those low states of charge, and at low states of charge like that, the cars can typically still go another 20, 30 miles, so I don't really think this is that different of a range figure anyway. And the other thing that's very easy to forget because the Model 3 long range has been gone so long is there is a $11,000 price discount from that Model 3 when it was new. It cost $57,000 and did not get a federal tax credit. Now this one came back at $47,000 and it qualifies for a $3,700 federal tax credit. So after incentives, this brings the long range Model 3 down to like $44,000, which is substantially more affordable than what it was when they removed it. Only weird part about that, of course, is that you can technically get, with incentives, a Model Y all-wheel drive for less money than a Model 3 long range, and most people probably are going to prefer the hatchback, so even the Model Y long range is actually only $2,000 more than the Model 3 long range. So I guess that's why I'd be very confused if Tesla ended up opting for 2170 cells from LG Chem, because if Tesla's trying to turn around Model 3 demand and get more people to buy the Model 3, this is a weird way of going about it. Like, Tesla doesn't seem to have a shortage of 2170 cells, right? That's the same cells they're using in the Tesla Semi, and they're ramping up Model Y production, and they seem to be shipping lots of 2170 cells over there. So if Tesla was comfortable just bringing back the long-range Model 3 with those cells, why not just get them from Giga Nevada? That's way closer to Fremont. You would qualify for the full $7,500 credit, and I think that would definitely incentivize more people to go for the Model 3 than just opting the extra $2,000 for a Model Y. Maybe there's a 2170 shortage I don't know about, or maybe Tesla is able to save a bunch of money by importing 2170 cells from China. So again, I hate to use the word confirmed before we really know for sure what this chemistry is, but my best bet is that this is a lithium iron manganese phosphate chemistry from CATL, and they haven't really rolled it out yet, but they're gonna put it in this Model 3 long range, and yes, while the the max range may be lower, it'll have a longer cycle life, it'll let you charge to 100% every day, and because of that longer cycle life, it will technically mean that after maybe 4 or 5 years of ownership, this new Model 3 long range will actually have better range than the old 2170 Model 3 long range, because that one's going to degrade faster. And keep in mind, that one you were pretty much just charging to 80% every single day anyway. You weren't getting that full 358 miles most of the time. That's my prediction, but again, I could be wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. What do you guys think Tesla is doing, and why do you think they want to keep so quiet on the chemistries, especially when they impact the day-to-day ownership of these vehicles? Feel free to let me know your predictions down below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. Have an excellent rest of your day.